believe in superstitions? No. No, I don't believe in superstitions consciously, but I do find myself not walking under ladders. I do find myself throwing salt over my shoulder when I drop it. And I do find myself thinking twice when a black cat crosses my path. So it's in there. It's in there. But I actively, actively fight against it. Tia Stone, if you could choose to have any superpower, what superpower would you choose? That's interesting. A part of me would love super strength, because like the Incredible Hulk, right? So hopefully super strength also went with durability in the body, so people could shoot you and just bounce off you. I would do so much shit with that. Like if I was a vampire, I would go into high crime areas and fuck people up. All bad guys. I'd fuck them up. And if I had strength like that, I would just terrorize bad people. Terrorize them. Because bad people need to be chased and spanked. And that's what I would do. If it wasn't super strength, it would be a super brain. Because human civilization is advanced by the brain, right? Our intelligence is our tool of survival. And if I had a really big brain, I might be able to do great things and maybe even make us immortal and stuff. Okay. What would you do, Tia? Don't say invisible, because that says things about you. Jen, what's up? Jen Marianne, what was it like working with Misha and watching Castiel become Cassifer? I think me and Misha have a pretty good time working together. We did a scene in the bar where we got to play around and joke with each other, and that was fun and free, and I like that. It's always fun beating up all the boys, right? That's what Lucifer does. Our brief contacts are violent. Sort of the title of my biography. And it was nice watching Misha bring elements of my Lucifer into his interpretation, because I thought that was just smart acting. He brought a consistent character through line into his version of it, right? So it could make us feel at once that we were watching something different and familiar at the same time, and I think that was pretty cool. CJ, what's up, CJ? And what's the best reaction from friends or family when they found out you were playing Lucifer? It's funny. I have relatives up north that live in Castro Valley and Hayward, around in and around the Bay Area, who are deep Christians, and they haven't had any reaction to the fact that I play Lucifer. Oh, my aunt, probably the worst human being in the world. Did I say that out loud? Is she's a born again Christian, but one of those born again Christians who's like a dry drunk. There are people that go into the AA program who are able to use the program to get sober, but not use it to improve their personalities one iota. So they're just narcissistic assholes who just happen to be sober. And my aunt is sort of like that. She's a narcissist who got into Christianity, and it hasn't changed her personality one iota. It just makes her more self-righteous. So she had issues with me, and we had a discussion over lunch one day. And it was probably the last time. It wasn't the last time I talked to her. I had reasons to talk to her, and then that was the last time I talked to her. But I basically said, so if I, say, discovered the cure for cancer, or was able to come up with a philosophical message that resonated with everybody, and suddenly everybody wanted to be free, and the whole world started thriving as a result. If I did that and made the world exponentially better, but I did not accept Christ into my life, would I go to hell? Her answer was, no, sorry. Yeah, so she's the only one who had issues with me being Lucifer. But the way I look at it is like this. If you buy the Christian ethos, right? If that's your thing, if you think good is represented by this, and you have to accept Christ in order to be welcomed into the kingdom of heaven, and the devil is the enemy, well, somebody's got to play the villain in a narrative. And if you believe in the devil, for Christ's sakes, you got to believe in God. So you should be as a Christian thanking me for playing the devil, because I'm part of a timeless narrative, right? About the timeless battle between good and evil. As far as I'm concerned, I'm doing God's work. I actually had the worst reaction from a friend playing when I played Jacob, because this friend of mine, who was a journalist as well, was really into Lost. Like, Frankie, what are you doing, buddy? You can't squeeze like that. Let me put you up there. Come here, buddy. You want to go down?
This is little Frank. He's very camera shy, you can tell. He doesn't like being on camera. People are watching him. Oh, yeah. You smell like corn chips. Why do you smell like corn chips? Because you haven't had a bath. Oh. Daddy, that's you. I know when he puts his face into me. Okay, you want to go down and drink some water? Hold on. My boy needs to go down the stairs here.
Yeah, okay, there you go, buddy. I knew he wanted water. See, we were connected by our minds. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the worst reaction I got doing a character was from a friend who was into Lost, and she was anticipating the Jacob character. She was, it was like a mystery that was driving her crazy. And when she saw that I was Jacob, she was like, "Oh my God, it's Mark Pellegrino." And so she couldn't take the part seriously anymore because she knew me from life. Actually, she was one of my students too, and she had been, ushers in lots of the plays that I did. So for her, it was Mark Pellegrino. She couldn't get Mark Pellegrino out of her head. What was that? Carla from Knox. How are you managing to keep your hair looking so good? Is someone cutting it for you? Yes, I went and illegally got my hair cut because I don't obey rules that are stupid. Look, this is a disclaimer. This creation does not, whatever I say, creation does not necessarily agree with, okay? So I, Mark Pellegrino, on my own, encourage you to rebel. But rebel safely, okay? Don't get sick. In a show, this is StageIt. StageIt, what does the F stand for? In a show in which you were the lead character, who would be your dream co-star leading lady? Oh my Lord. That is a tough question. That is a tough question. You know what I'm talking about? Because there's so many great actresses out there. I don't even like calling actresses actresses. I call them actors, right? Actors now seem so, 20th century. Wow. I mean, I'd have to think, because some of them, there's some actors, women actors from other countries who are just phenomenal, and their names are escaping me right now. The star of a movie called Victoria, she's just absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely amazing. I would love her to be like the foil to me, like a detective, like I'm the crusty detective and she's like the young idealist, and we clash all the time. She'd be really funny in that. If you haven't seen Victoria, you should. It's a 138-minute long consecutive take. The whole movie's done in one take, and it's all over Berlin. It's a German film. She's Spanish, but she speaks English through the whole thing. And they go all over Berlin, inside, outside, in cars, out of cars, everywhere, all in one take. It's extraordinary. And so just so many actresses. It's really hard for me to come up with any one that would be a dream. Any one of them who is nominated, over this last year, I would love to work with. I mean, they're just tremendous. And the great thing about women actors, I've noticed as being a distinct quality, as distinct from men actors, is that the older women get, the better they get. The craft is just so amazing. I mean, Meryl Streep now versus Kramer is it's like comparing a very diligent professional to a god. Helen Mirren, just so amazing. And I'd love to work with Helen Mirren. Wouldn't that be fun? How many languages do you speak? I speak one language, English. I can't consider my French to be very good because it's like 6th grade level. If I did it every day, I'd probably be pretty good because I sort of have an ear for it. And I don't care if I'm doing all the grammar wrong, and I am, right? When I speak French, I do it all wrong because it's really complicated language. Passé composé? Man. I don't need it. So I speak French, but I can't. It's like I speak French until I go to Paris. And then I'm just almost completely lost. But if somebody's speaking very slowly, which they don't do in Paris, and they also have idioms that I don't know, and they scrunch words together, right? Je suis, I am, is suis. And when you're speaking really fast, somebody says suis, I don't know what the fuck that is. I can't. What? What did you just say? So, poor to mediocre French. I might take up Spanish because in California I could probably speak it a lot. I have a lot of Spanish friends, and I'm really sort of immersed in the Hispanic community out here in LA. So I would have more time to practice it and become more fluent. Is there any projects you are going to be in that you can talk about or hint? Well, guys, I had a job before coronavirus stopped the engines of industry. And hopefully that job will still be there when I come back. I'm hesitant to say what it is because, hey, what if it's not there? What if Showtime decides not to do it? I don't know. Hopefully they do. Last I heard, that was the intention. And it's a great, great, great show. I think you guys are going to really like it, and that's all I can tease. I won't tease the name of it or anything, but there is something coming up that's very, very good. It's got some great actors in it, and I'm proud to be a part of it if I'm still a part of it. What is the one thing you learned about yourself during this quarantine? Ooh, such a probing question. I learned that if I'm not careful, I can let social media debates take me away from far more important things. Because, you may think this is self-evident, but it's not to a person who believes in reason. That you're not going to convince anybody on social media is a cliche that is nonetheless true. No matter how rational your perspective is, no matter how much information you're integrating in relationship to what they're integrating, it's just a waste of goddamn time, which is why I've stepped away from it. And plus, Twitter purges me because they consider me an outlier, dangerous, somebody who's saying things that could upset the social milieu, whatever it is. And I am. So, that's their vibe, then whatever. So I found out that I could get lost in Twitter debates when I should be doing other things. And so now I've decided to do those other things. I'm writing a script. I'm 40 pages into it. I finished the outline, extensive outline. So I should be done with the first draft by next Friday. And hopefully I won't think it sucks. I'm just going straight through it. Usually I write and edit and write and edit and write and edit. My wife just said, you got to write the whole draft. Just finish it, which is what I'm going to do. I've been doing tons of reading. When you saw me, I was reading Discovery of Freedom by Ruth Wilder Lane, one of the 3 greatest women in the history of the world. If you haven't read Rose Wilder Lane, you must read her immediately. She's fantastic. And Isabella Patterson. My heroes are women, powerful women who are intellectual giants and almost totally unrecognized by the intellectual elites who have rejected them. Misogyny? Can anybody say misogyny? So I've restarted my engine, right? Usually I have a schedule that takes me somewhere, and in between schedules, I'm great filling in that time with things that I have to do. When I don't have that schedule leading me, I have to be a complete self-starter. So that's what I do. I do my exercises. I do Qigong every day. I write. I watch a film and do a film review. And if you want me to, guys, I can publish those for you, so if you like them. But it's all for my own epistemological growth. And I write my script, and then I spend a couple hours a day doing cameos, which are really hard, believe it or not. Subversive cameos, mostly subversive cameos. And so that's what I've discovered, that I could get lost in irrelevancies if I'm not careful. So if that's you guys, stop it. You're not going to convince a skeptic of anything. Let's see, learn about the... Jeff wants to know the most difficult role to wrap your head around. Hamlet. Of course. Hamlet. Why, I wonder? Well, because, when you're, for lots of reasons. The great thing about Shakespeare is that you're dealing with deep concepts and simple human actions. And that happens when you do classic plays in general. The words that you say actually are reflective of a very profound analysis of the world and the human condition. But Shakespeare has the added element of lyrical language and words that are archaic and not really in our language. And so to connect with the dialogue and to render it to somebody like I'm talking to you now is quite hard. And to wrap yourself around the concepts themselves, because I don't think you can do Shakespeare just understanding what you're doing and how you feel about it, which you can do television that way. You have to understand the concepts. So when you say, what a piece of work is a man, you are immersing yourself in the nobility of humanity. The paragon of animals, it's an enormous concept, right? If you know that speech from Hamlet, when he's talking to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. It ends on a rather cynical note, but it talks about how great humanity is. And to embed yourself in those thoughts is a challenging ordeal. What books do you like to read? Well, Rose Wilder Lane, as I said. I love reading books on political theory and ideas. Philosophy, if it's good. Most philosophy is terrible and circuitous and overwritten and intentionally obscurantist. So I don't like reading Kant. Someone who can go on for a page with barely a punctuation point shouldn't be read. They don't know how to write, and they're intentionally trying to fuck you up, or so it would seem. So I love reading. What am I reading now? I'm reading something about the American mind and the revolution. It's an analysis of the Declaration of Independence and the American Revolution. I'm reading a book on what is that? I have a Michael Shermer book that I've read parts of it for philosophy class, The Moral Arc, and I'm going to read the rest of it just on my own. I'm finishing a book on Hannibal, not Hannibal Lecter, Hannibal the general from Carthage. And so I'm reading about the Punic War there, and tons of stuff. And I just ordered a few novels too, just to sort of spice things up for myself. Ask Alice and a bunch of the controversial novels. So I mix it up with the fiction every once in a while. I mostly read nonfiction, philosophy and history, predominantly American history. And then I mix it up sometimes with a novel to keep my creative juices flowing. SPN fans, since we know Lucy is the empty or in the empty, how long do you think it would be till he annoys the shadow entity to send him back? I know the answer to that, and it doesn't matter anymore because it's all over. Sorry. How will Lucifer react to Michael being on his side now? What? Michael's on Lucifer's side now? Angels suck, man. They're so fickle. Whatever. I don't take it seriously at all. Michael's just probably doing what he thinks will advance him. That's all he cares about. No, really, Michael's supposed to be the one who cares about Dad. Michael's advancing the interests of heaven. Bullshit. He's doing it for himself. From Mars. Oh, cool. I've always wanted to go to Mars. Do you expect Chuck to be the bad guy? Don't you? I mean, what do you think of a being that inflicts humanity with pestilence, murder, evil? Yeah, not a good dude. But that's what, writers have to be slightly masochistic and sadistic, and I think Chuck is showing us that he's certainly a good writer. Do you have any quirky hidden talents, and if so, what? I can move my ears. Do you want to see me move my ears? Did you see that? I hope you saw that. Now, Jeff Goldblum can do one ear at a time. I can't do that. I just look constipated when I try to do that. I look in the mirror and I look like this. So that's as far as I get. Other hidden talents, let me see. That's it. That's all I got. Yeah. It's not going to win me any place in America's Got Talent, will it? I mean, I could try to audition, see how I do. Do you have any quick... Oh, Leanne Dorms wants to know, was there any particular moment in your life that changed your perspective on life and how you live it? Yeah, but not quite that way. I don't think there's ever been a time in my life where I've had an immediate epiphany that changed me from that time forward. I've had epiphanies that sort of woke me up to a different perspective, and they certainly changed my behaviors, but the old perspective would still seep in from time to time. For example, I mean, I feel like I had been toying with atheism for decades, right? I mean, I'm an objectivist, and objectivists are atheists for reasons. It's not just a random thing, not a random choice. But I couldn't shake that idea of God. And could it have been because I was put in Sunday school from the time I was 4 years old? Maybe. Went to Catholic school, was immersed in Christian theology for a large portion of my life. Could be. Could it be that I came from a broken home and had a fractured psychology and a need for a father figure that loved me no matter what? Yeah, it could be. But for whatever reason, I could not quite divorce myself from that world until probably about 7 years ago. And that's after knowing that it was a logical contradiction to hold those ideas. They still held on to me. Certainly when I read Ayn Rand, I was moved to look at life, values, self-esteem, pride, things that we sort of consider to be not necessarily related to virtue or goodness in a different light. And so that was good. But for me, epiphanies, they happen, and then it takes a long time for the effects of them to seep into my gut so that I'm actually changed as a human being. What's your most favorite memory of the SPN set? I sort of answered that earlier. Maybe you weren't here, Robina. I would say walking and acting in Jared's fart cloud. It's such a fine memory. And, smell is directly related to your emotional sense. So, yeah, whenever I think of that fart smell, I'm transported into a state of joy. Is that weird? What's my favorite food to have on set? I like everything. there's probably literally not a food you could come up with that I don't like. But let's see. Sometimes they have this thing when you go for long stretches, if your days are like 15, 16 hours, they have like a second meal, right? And usually it's at 4 a.m. when you shouldn't be eating. And often it's like pizza or Chinese food or burritos. I love that shit. It's so good. Especially if the pizza has pineapples. And burritos with pineapples, yummy. Chinese food, pineapples all the way through it. Whoever doesn't like pineapple in anything, something's wrong with you. All right, I'm saying it out loud. You heard me. This is recorded. All right. I'm going to see this somewhere on social media. Somebody's going to use this to attack me. You wait. Let's see. Any StageIt questions from anybody? Tips for a young actor, 16-year-old. Yes. Look, if you're an actor, treat your acting aspirations as you would if you wanted to be a doctor. As a doctor, you would have to go to medical school. You'd have to ingest a certain amount of knowledge, a great deal of knowledge, and then you'd have to practice your craft, right? As an intern, and if you're a surgeon, as a surgeon, over and over again until you get proficient at it. And you would never go to a doctor that didn't do those things, right? That person would be incompetent. The same rules apply to an actor. As an actor, go to class, not necessarily college. You don't need college. Acting doesn't necessarily teach you how to act. There's some very good college courses, like at Yale Drama School and stuff. Probably Carnegie Mellon and a few other places like that are pretty good. But you get with a good, reputable theater company, like the place that I used to teach at, Playhouse West, where you get a reading list at the beginning of the year that will put any college curriculum to shame. If you finish just the section on the classics alone, which is a paragraph this big of all the classics that you should read and all the classic authors, you'd be miles ahead of any Hollywood actor out there. And then practice your technique, get a craft through technique, and then practice that, and then get up on stage as much as you can and work that technique so that it doesn't look like you're doing a technique when you're working in the future. Become a master, right? And become a black belt of acting, which only means a master of the basics. But the fundamentals of acting are true no matter what technique you learn. Once you become a master of those, go out there and wreak havoc, but never stop practicing. What was the difference between portraying Nick and Lucy? I mean, Lucy was just sort of fun. There's no rules to Lucy, right? Lucy was above rules, and there's something very liberating about being anarchistic in that sense. And I'm a guy who fights anarchists all the time. I don't believe in it in life. I think moral anarchy is a denial of reality and natural law, right? And the requirements for human life. They're not anarchistic. We're bound by natural law. But Lucifer wasn't bound by natural law. He wasn't bound by anything except what he felt. And sometimes indulging those childlike whims are really fun. And Nick he had a damaged past. He was overcome by revenge. And once he started to satiate that desire for revenge, he became addicted to power, and he wanted to be free, morally anarchistic the way Lucifer was. But Lucifer could only be morally anarchistic because he was an eternal being. He didn't have to stick to rules like you and I do, right? We jump off a building, it hurts us. Lucifer could jump off a building and be perfectly fine. And I think Nick thought that was liberating. And if it wasn't liberating, at least the feeling of power that it gave him over others was sort of liberating. That's sick. That's a tyrant psychology, in my view. Last question, De Winter. Hey! What are your thoughts on Nick's storyline from when you first got the role to the conclusion of Nick returning? So the Nick in season 5 was a very different person than the Nick that we eventually got in later seasons. I presumed Nick to be an upstanding, moral, godly man who was betrayed by God. Sort of like Lucifer. It's a very similar storyline, right? Lucifer was virtuous, loved God, refused to betray his values to please God, and instead of being rewarded for his virtue, he was punished. And likewise, the Nick that I knew in season 5 was a godly man who should have coasted through life and got all the blessings of a godly, virtuous man, but instead he got his family murdered and couldn't understand why bad things happen to good people. I think Rabbi Harold Kirshner wrote a book about that called Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. And so the Nick of later seasons, though, seemed like he had that seed of corruption in him from the very beginning, and it was just promoted by acting badly. And the more he acted badly, the more of a reward and thrill he got, like the person who takes drugs and then has to take more drugs to satisfy whatever the drugs, whatever nerve centers the drugs are hitting. That's the way Nick became with power. And so to the point where he, in the love triangle between his wife and Lucifer and himself, he chose Lucifer and power over true love. So that's the difference between those two Nicks as far as I can tell. I hope that answer satisfied you. So I guess we're done, guys. It was really great talking at you. I wish I could see you and touch you and give you hugs, and that we could just really talk to each other. Hopefully in the near future we will be able to do that. Until then, au revoir.